Hi, it's Jake Garbarino, and today I'm coming with a endgame that was truly terrible. Um, when I was young, I really didn't like endgames. I thought they were boring. I thought they were all draws. I didn't see the point, and endgame books really bored me. And one big jump I made in strength, somewhere maybe around 2000, 2100, was just realizing that no one plays endgames well, and that by playing them aggressively and forcefully, you can just win a lot of free points. And so this is a game. I was playing a tournament, and I'd finished my game, and I was looking around the tournament hall, and I saw this position. I thought it was pretty interesting, and it was between a 1400 and a 1700, and the average USCF player is 1500, or the average USCF adult is around 1500. So these are average tournament players. These are people who've spent significant time playing chess and play it fairly well. And they put together a truly, don't want to be too mean here, they made a lot of inaccurate moves. So if we look at this position, it's black to move. What should black play? And I think you should pause the video and look at it for a little and try to figure out, is black playing to draw or is black playing to win? And if so, how would you accomplish that? And then I'm going to show the game continuation, and then I'm going to show some improvements. So pause your video and try to figure out what black should do and what result black is playing for. Okay, so in the actual game, black played king d6. This move makes no sense to me. The obvious move for white to continue is king c4, and after king c4, the black king cannot stay defending the pawn. Now, we're not going to be able to defend c4, so the question is, if we allow king c4, which it seems like we must allow, where can our king go such that we can then defend the pawn? The only square we're going to defend the pawn from is here. So naturally, it seems to me you would play king e5 or king e6 with the point that either one can meet king c4 with king d6. The white king cannot take the pawn, they cannot infiltrate, they are forced back, and we can return to the initial position. And in no way do we ever lose the pawn. So king d6 seems a huge error to me, because white easily wins c5. The white player played king e3. Now, to be fair to both of these players, they were both low on time. It was the end of a tournament. It's a long game. But king c4 seems very obvious. The black player repeated, and again went to d6, which, as we know, not a very good move. White this time played king c4. And again, we have the question, what should black do? So, pause the video and pick a move. So again, we have connected squares. Much like when white played king c4, we wanted to be able to play king d6. We're going to let white play king c5, we cannot stop them, but we'd like to meet that with a move that doesn't allow them to further infiltrate. Thus the best move is king d7. And after king takes, we can play king c7, and the white cannot infiltrate or approach our pawns. And they must back up, and we should be able to hold the draw. Now, the move played is not in fact losing, but king c7, again, just doesn't make sense to me. We've talked about the opposition. White takes, black's king is going to have to go one way or the other, and white's king can infiltrate the other way. White's king can outflank. So king c7 doesn't make much sense. But now, how should black defend? It's clear we're in trouble. How do we defend? So, we don't want the king to approach our pawns. This is clearly much more dangerous than this is. So we should go to b7. Now, they can come in, but we can mirror their king's movements. If they come here, we go here. If they go here, we actually just follow them. We keep the opposition. You can have sideways opposition too. Wherever they go, we mirror their movements. Now you can get some interesting lines, like what if they go here? If we go here, maybe they can break the opposition by going here, right? And if we went here, now it's them who has the opposition. Or if we went here, they get the opposition. And if we go like here, they just come at our pawn, and they're going to get the opposition. So it's a bit tricky. So the correct move actually, if they go here, there might be multiple ways to draw. But in fact, we can keep the distant opposition. Anytime they come close, we come close. If they move away, we can't get the opposition here, but we can get the distant opposition. And we can make a lot of moves here and by keeping the distant opposition, they can't make progress. So, with king b6, we go back to the game. I'm a long way away. Or with king b7, we can hold a draw. So, of course, king d7 was played. Now, white infiltrates. White's going to win the a-pawn. In fact, white won the c-pawn first. Yes, black can hold on to this pawn, but they're not going to be able to stop the a-pawn running up the board. So that's a loss too. White wins the pawns. And now we get the question, how should white win? So white pushed their pawns, and white reached this position. Now, you know, if you've watched my last video on endgames, that in this position, even without the a-pawn, even if the a-pawn was gone, we got rid of it. Do I remember how to make red arrows? I made a yellow arrow. That's pretty impressive. I made a blue. Yes, I made a red. Even if this pawn was gone, once our pawn is on the 5th rank on their side of the board, we need our king only one square in front of the pawn, and we can win with just the king. So white could have in fact won with king a6, b6, b7, and make a queen with the pawn. They don't need the second pawn. But this white player continued pushing their pawns, and they reached this position. Now, white was very low on time, and white reached to advance the a-pawn. They almost touched the a-pawn. They didn't. They realized a7 is a draw. It's a stalemate. So then, knowing that a7 was a draw, they picked up their king. Now, of course, b7 is winning. If b7, king a7, king c7, and they queen, and if king b8, white should not play king b6, which is a stalemate, but white can give up a pawn to get the same win. But presumably, the player thought a7 is a stalemate, they thought b7 is a stalemate, which it isn't, so they picked up their king and almost moved it to c7. When they realized that's a stalemate too, and that is when their clock ran out, and it was a draw because black has insufficient mating material. Now, of course, b7 wins. The king can maneuver around, but it's actually, if you don't see that b7 wins, this is not a trivial position to win. We can move our king around all we want, and their king just goes back and forth. Now, if their king is on b8, we have in fact triangulated. We have gotten to a slightly different position. We've usually seen this position with their king on a8. Now b7 is an obvious win. And now a7 is also a win that we need to play b7 here to win. So we need to be willing to sack a pawn to get there. But I thought this was truly incredible because this position, you know, white's up 2 pawns. It's, the 1400 was white, b7 seems pretty findable at that level. The player had very little time. But throughout, the endgame was just littered with mistakes that changed the result. This move, in fact, in the opening position, I should say, black is actually winning. This move throws away the win due to king c4. This move, black is now winning again because white should have played king c4. After this move, black just gave up the win again. And after this move doesn't actually change the result, but as we said, it was problematic. And now black has gone from winning in the opening position to losing. And then, somehow, despite the extra 2 pawns, this was a draw. Almost played king c7, didn't, ran out of time. So how could white win at the start, or black win at the start? Now, it's pretty clear that king moves don't help. King here, as we saw, was bad. King here, we can keep them from infiltrating, but we don't make any progress. So the only move, and when I showed this position to a 2400, they looked at it for maybe 10-15 seconds and just had the solution, where immediately their instinct was c4 check. Does c4 work? And it was my instinct too when watching, though I did not see the solution near as quickly as this 2400 did. c4 check. Now, if white's king moves, we just take on b3, and it's pretty easy to win this a pawn up. I probably shouldn't say pretty easy. We've seen what can happen multiple pawns up in these king and pawn endgames. But the only testing move against c4 is to take the pawn. And now what I saw first was king c5, king c3. My king has to go back. I'm not making progress. He saw the same thing, but immediately saw, what if I go the other way? Now, everything goes right for black. If white goes to c3, there are 2 obvious moves. If they go here, we just pick up their pawn. So their 2 obvious moves are king e3 and king c3. Now, if they play king c3, we're going to outflank them and push them in. Note they cannot get the opposition, so when they make a move like here, we will get the opposition. Their king can't stay defending their pawn. If they go here, their king can stay defending their pawn slightly longer. Once we go here, their king can't stay connected, and we're going to win the pawn. End the game, I hope. What about king e3? This looks like they have the opposition, but we have a reserve tempo. We can move our pawn. Now we have the opposition. If their king goes here, we come in. When their king goes here, we come here, and again, they can't get the opposition due to our pawn, and they can't stop our king coming over and taking all their stuff. If they go here, we just come closer. If they go here, we get the opposition, and we're going to pick up their pawns. So from the start, we have an interesting king and pawn endgame. Black is an extra pawn, but must specifically find this pawn sacrifice, followed by king e5, with the understanding that black will get the opposition. With the opposition, they will outflank, and once they have outflanked, the white king cannot get the opposition back, and black is going to come over and pretty quickly grab the pawns. As the game went, if you don't find c4, of course black should play king e6 or king e5 so that they can meet king c4 with king d6, and this will be a draw. And so we have a lot of times when there are squares that relate to each other, right? When white plays king c4, we need to play king d6 in response. In the best line, when white plays king e3, we need to get the opposition. We can't let them have the opposition. We need the reserve tempo. But we'd rather play king e5 with king d6 than go king d6 immediately, because we need to be able to play king d6 when they play king c4. So I thought it was a really interesting endgame. I don't think it's that surprising that players screwed it up, but it shows you, even with so little material on the board, and with the line so short, perfectly good chess-playing adults will make mistake after mistake. And a clever player is going to be able to pick up a lot of extra points if they're aware of these concepts and thinking well in the endgame rather than just making moves on autopilot. Because I think what black did here was black played king d6 because they wanted to stay as close as they could to their pawns. They didn't realize that d6 and c4 were related squares. Anytime white goes to c4, I want to go to d6. They went to d6 immediately because it seemed closest to the game. General principles. The opponent went here. Now they wanted to stay as close as they could to their pawns, so they played king c7. We know king d7 is a better move, but they played king c7. Now, I don't have a very good explanation for this move, but you can see how by playing automatically and not calculating the position like a player, a 1700 player is very capable of interesting, complex calculations, and they just weren't doing them here. And the player as black had some more time on the clock, and they just played kind of automatically. And so I think get points off people in endgames. You can go into endgames that look very neutral, and if you find the more forceful plan, if in king and pawn endgames you're aware of the opposition, and you notice these corresponding squares, you're going to get a lot more points than the people who don't.